Hi everyone, this is Jolie from Let's Vote. So today I'm interviewing Jesse from Douglas College.
Yep.
And I'm very honored to be able to interview Jesse because he is an amazing young man. And he told me that he was a drug addict before, but now he's in the college studying law and he gets a GPA of 4.0. Isn't that amazing? We want every young man to be like that, right? Even though they go through hardship, but they can come back and they can still excel in life. So now let's hear his story. Hi, Jesse.
Hello.
So I'm wondering when you started to take drugs and what happened, why you took it, and how you come out of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because it's a lot more than drugs. The issue of addiction really started for me when I was like a kid. I grew up in a household. Both my parents were addicts. My mom's clean now, which is very good, and my dad's he's been on and off, but he's doing pretty good now. And so I grew up pretty rough. But addiction for me actually it started with video games when I was about 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, around grade 4, I really relied on like the Xbox. I really relied on like the PC and like PS4, and I used that as like an outlet to get outside of like my feelings, right? And I almost taught myself that, right? Like I taught myself that that I could use that as a way to cope with life, right? Because like growing up, my life was pretty rough, and I'd go to school, and elementary school at the time. She has a question.
Yes?
Do you think it's work?
Oh, just give me a second.
No
It
worries.
says, what does it mean? It stopped?
They
加量中增加
see
关注
anything.
0. Okay, they didn't see anything. Okay. See here? It's still going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Just a glitch. That's okay.
But yeah, no. Just to reiterate, like, it started with video games. But what addiction is at its core is inside. It's everything that's going on inside my head, right? It's how I feel about myself. It's my self-esteem, my self-respect, my self-love. It's not having that. And, some people call it a mental disease, and that's what I think it is. I think it's a disease. I think it's a disease that you live with, but can be arrested if you do the right things. So as I got older, and I went through elementary school, I eventually got to high school, and those learned behaviors, those behaviors of trying to use things to get outside myself, progress onto other things, right? So, people say that marijuana is not a gateway drug. My addiction started with marijuana. They're all the same, right? They all do the same thing. They affect your mind and make you feel different than how you naturally feel. So I started with marijuana, and I started using marijuana. The first time I tried it, I didn't really like it, and then every day, I started to progress, and then I was like, what if I tried it again? Maybe it'll be better this time. And I did, and eventually I started to like it, and then then I added alcohol. So sometimes I would do marijuana and alcohol, and then as I got older, 16, 17. Then I started doing things like cocaine. I experimented with like acid, mushrooms and stuff like that, all in an attempt to get outside myself. So a symptom of addiction, the best way to explain it, a symptom of addiction is actually using the drugs. So the entire time that I had some addicts explain it as like this hole that I was trying to fill with outside things and instant gratification, watching YouTube, playing video games, doing drugs, and I didn't know how to fix that. I just felt so miserable. Like I feel good for 10 minutes, right? And then I feel like crap again. but my behaviors progressed into other things. So it wasn't just escaping. Like I started to almost like teach myself, like lying, cheating, stealing. I started to, treat my mom negatively, my dad negatively, my brother negatively, who was younger than me, and my sister, and I'd feel bad, right? But instead of like taking responsibility and apologizing and changing my behaviors, I just go use drugs because it's instant gratification. I felt better, right? For just a moment. But I never actually worked on that. So I think that's kind of where it started, and what my addiction was like. For the most part, it was just using things. I want to say again, using things to get outside myself. But the addiction is all in here. It's a mental disease. Yeah.
Mm. So how did you come out of it? That's the miraculous part, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like it is a miracle. Well, it seems like a miracle because, the government makes it seem almost hopeless. They don't put an emphasis on recovery, but anybody can get recovery. I truly believe that. I came out of it because I reached a point of. We have a weird saying. It's called the gift of desperation. It's a gift because being desperate isn't fun. I'll say that, but it's a gift because it actually allows you for a moment to be desperate enough to do something different than you've always done, right? Well, I was in my addiction. I was never desperate enough to take responsibility. So in this moment of desperation I had, and it was a situation that I had in my life that happened. I asked for help because I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? I was like, what I'm doing is not working. Thankfully, my mom at the time she's always had my back, even when I haven't been the best son when I was a teenager. So in the background, she was making calls to these treatment centers. And I got really lucky to get into a private one. I'm status Indigenous, so I was lucky to get into a private one and have that funded. But because she was calling, you're kind of guiding her what to do, right? And I see this with parents a lot. As parents, and it's heartbreaking because the parents they love their kids, right? They're trying to control so much, trying to. So sometimes they'll yell at the kids. Sometimes they'll give the kids what they want. The parents try all these different things because they're just trying to help their kid, right? And so they're coaching my mom. They're like, okay, like you can't really do anything unless he makes a choice for himself to go to treatment. So that moment of desperation, she had everything ready. And I asked my mom for help. And then she's like, okay, well, I've been talking to this place. Let's go check it out. So they brought me in, I checked it out. And they taught me. Well, at first I was very hesitant. But in my desperation, I knew that my mind would change very quickly. Because that's kind of how desperation works. And I can get into later why that's an issue in the policy system. But desperation can last like a day or 2 or 3 or a week, but it goes away quick, right? Because you're desperate for a certain amount of time, and then you go back to using drugs. You're like, okay, I don't want to go to treatment anymore. I don't want to get help anymore, right? So I told them, like, you need to intake me like quick, or else I'm gonna change my mind. I'm not gonna come. So they did, the place I went to, and they taught me a lot of stuff. The beginning of a treatment stay, I kind of thought it was going to be like a doctor's office visit. I thought it was going to be like, go in there, they're going to give me, a pill, or they're gonna fix me, basically. So the first few months I struggled a lot because I had this assumption that they were supposed to fix me and I didn't have to do anything. But they were very patient with me. And they kept telling me the truth. They kept telling me that they were honest with me. They were like, yeah, you messed up. you screwed up your life. But they were like, what do you want to do about it, right? And they kept pushing that on me and like saying, hey, what do you want to, like, what responsibility? And one day it clicked, a very specific day, and I remember this. I overthink the hell out of things. So they were talking about, in groups, like group counseling sessions at this place I went to, they're talking about rationalization, justification, and minimization. And they were explaining kind of what those meant, like the definitions of those, because that's something addicts do. They justify, minimize, and rationalize everything, right, to avoid responsibility. It's like a tactic that almost addicts use. And I remember I went to bed that night, and I asked myself, I'm like, what if I apply those definitions to my thoughts? So I sat there and I just let my mind wander, and some of the thoughts that came up was like, oh, I'm not as bad as the other guys here, or I only smoke weed, so like I'm not that much of an addict. Like these thoughts came into my mind, and I didn't only smoke weed, but like, you know, I would tell myself these things. And then I would ask myself, like, did that thought fall into, did I minimize that or rationalize? And I realized that all of my thoughts fell into those. Mm. It's like, oh, I'm not as bad as the other people here. It's like, well, I'm minimizing my addiction. Mm. It's like, if you end up in a treatment center, you don't end up there by accident, right? But I tell myself these crazy things, and then I realized, like, oh, wow. So I realized it was actually my own thinking that brought me to where it was. And that day I realized I need to do something. Like the treatment center I was at, they were giving me the tools to stay clean, but I actually needed to use the tools, right? Like, it's like your boss is telling you to use the hammer to nail in a nail, but I'm using my hand, and then the hammer is there. He's like, it's right here, right? It's like, I actually got to grab the hammer and use it. You know, and I decided that day, okay, I'm gonna do that, right? And one of the main things for me was like, I was just quiet, because I would always talk back to people. Every addict's a bit different. They have their own kind of form, but for me, I'm like, I'm gonna shut up. I'm just gonna stop talking. If somebody tells me to do something, I'm not going to argue. I'm just going to do it. And I think that was the beginning of my recovery. So to break it down simply, it was my addiction, and then I was clean for a couple months, but I wasn't in recovery. So then after that moment I just talked about, now that was the beginning of my recovery. And sometimes they call them dry drunks, right? It's like when you stop drinking, but you still act the same, right? And now I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, let's do something about it. Yeah, so that's what got me clean. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So can you point us to the ages? For example, when did you start taking marijuana? When did you have the enlightenment and start to stop it, right? Mm-hmm. So do you have, going back and forth that period?
I did have a brief period.
Relapse.
I did have a brief period of relapse when I was 16 years old. Mm-hmm. I'm by God's grace, I'm very lucky to have arrested my addiction so young. Mm-hmm. I think it's partially because my family went through programs, so they kind of knew a lot about addiction. They were clean. They kind of went through that process of getting clean and stopping drugs. And before my dad struggled a lot, he was clean for like 16 years, and then he went back into addiction. And there's a reason why. I can explain that to you later. But I think it was just because I was surrounded by that environment. So people brought it to my attention, so I was able to arrest it young. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd say my addiction started with video games, and then when I was summer of grade 8 going to grade 9 is when I tried marijuana for the first time.
13?
Yeah, 13.
Yeah. Okay.
13. So, but the behaviors using video games and smoking weed, same behaviors, right? Just different things I'm using, kind of. So, but it progressed into marijuana, and then kind of, and that's the thing is I don't remember much of my high school years because I was using so many drugs, right? I was drinking so much. You know, some people they look back, oh, like he's just a young guy partying and drinking, experimenting. But for me, it was different because you know I would go to these parties and some kids would be, oh, I gotta go to school tomorrow, or I got a test tomorrow, I'm gonna stop. For me, I couldn't stop. Like, why are these people? And yeah, so as it went on, grade 10, alcohol, like I go back and forth between marijuana and alcohol. I would smoke a lot of marijuana, and then something would happen. I'd be like, okay, I gotta stop that. So I just like replace it with alcohol. This is the same thing, right? It's just you're substituting one drug for another, basically. And I did that for a while, and then I hung out with the wrong crowds. So I surrounded myself with the wrong people, and they you know, I never really got heavily into LSD or like mushrooms, or you know, thank God I never got heavily into cocaine. I did try it, and I almost went down that path. But yeah, I dabbled here and there. I tried a whole bunch of different things. And then when I was 16, at that time, you asked me about, I had a moment of desperation. Again, like this was my first moment of kind of desperation, where I was using drugs, but I was at a point where my tolerance was so high I wasn't getting high anymore. So at this point I was just miserable. I didn't have anything to make me feel better. So I called up to God, and I'm like, God, like, help me stop using. And I relied on God for a long time, and I would pray lots. But what happened, the reason I relapsed, is because of complacency. Like God gave me the free will to make my own decisions. So I can choose to pray, and I can choose to rely on Him, but then I can choose. So I got complacent, basically. I didn't have any other forms of recovery. It was just that. So when I started to get complacent with that one thing, I started to go back into old patterns and old behaviors. So it was like 5 months I was clean. And then I stopped praying. I less and less praying and less motivation. And then I was right back to square one. I was the same person, but without the drugs and drinking. So I was the same person. I was dry drunk, right? And then I relapsed because I was like, that's in my head at the time was my only way out of addiction. Yeah, because I didn't change anything. And then I was in addiction until 18 again, and I had that moment of desperation with the treatment.
So how long does the treatment occur, and how long have you been clean since then?
So I've been clean consistently for almost 4 years, 3 years, and like, if I had to guess, like, actually I'll show you. I have my exact clean time. So I have this app that I use. It's called the Clean Time app.
Oh, amazing!
So 3 years, 8 months, and 23 days.
Congratulations!
Yeah, that's how long I've been clean
Great,
for.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What is that app called?
So this one's called Clean Time app. There's a whole bunch of them that they have. But this was just called the Clean Time app. So I got this a long time ago.
Clean Time app.
And it has a whole bunch of like just for today quotes. So
Is it a Christian app?
No, it's not Christian. So this is it's a spiritual program. I do not represent it. We have a tradition in this program where we don't have leaders in this program, so we can't talk about this program like we are like know everything about it, because everybody's experience in the program is different. But I'm a part of this program, and it helps me stay clean. It's called Narcotics Anonymous. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous, based off the same stuff. but that's what helps me stay clean, and then I pray and stuff too. But I have a lot of other things that I do now that help me stay. So if I get complacent with praying, and I have NA, and that helps me. If I get complacent with NA, then I have God, and I have my friends, and so it's grown into this whole like web of interconnected things that help me stay clean. In a sense, it's really now it's really. I haven't thought about drugs in probably like 3 years.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, not once. Yeah.
It's a very good support team, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the recovery program took like 2 months, or how long was?
So this one, so the treatment center introduced me to this recovery program. That's a part of their programming. Is so they don't run Narcotics Anonymous. So so for somebody who doesn't know much about treatment or that kind of stuff, treatment is separate from NA, but treatment can help you get the skills, and then they also introduce you to these NA meetings. You don't need treatment to stay clean, is my opinion, but I think it helps quite a lot. I have to be careful about words not to promote NA as like as I know, to be. I am not a leader of NA, and I do want to emphasize that treatment is separate from NA. NA is its own kind of thing that people go to in treatment or not in treatment. But when I went to treatment, they introduced me to NA. We go to meetings every day in the community. And then in the treatment we have group. It's a peer-based treatment approach. So they have caseworkers and counselors and all that. But how it works is there's the group of guys, and some will be more senior because they've been there for longer. And then some guys, and then they'll teach those guys. They'll make friendships with the new guys, and they'll teach them, hey, you can't lie all the time. That's why you're using drugs, is because you feel like crap because you're acting crappy, so this peer-based treatment approach gets the guys to actually teach them and make connections, and the connection helps them stay clean too. But to answer your question, how long it occurs for, it's very nuanced. It's at least in the place I went to, it's very client needs. So some clients can be there for a year, some clients can be there 60 months, some clients be there for 3 months, 5 months, but it's based on the client's needs and also what the client wants. For me, I stayed in primary treatment for a year, and then I was in transitional treatment, which is they kind of start transitioning you to real world, and for about 4 months. But I honestly chose that because I actually started to like treatment. I started to really enjoy it, so I chose to be there for longer. But yeah, some people 3 months, and then they've learned the skills, and they go and they end up going to NA meetings outside of treatment because they enjoy it. They've made friends, and they help them stay clean. They pray. If they're not religious, they don't pray, but they rely maybe on their friends instead. And they stay clean from doing the next right thing, basically. Yeah.
It's great. So I learned a lot from your talk. I see that for this complex issue, it actually takes a lot of people and a long time to recover, right? For example, in your case, it's treatment, and it's friends, and it's support group like NA, and it's faith as well, and it's your parents, your friends. It's a lot of groups and people and programs that are put together, right, to help you get out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, because the government is promoting drugs in supportive housing and shelters where the homeless can go according to the government to seek help. So do you find this model helpful or no?
No.
Yeah, why not?
A lot of reasons why. Well, the BC housing model of just basically giving people drugs and places to use, it doesn't really actually provide like a sense of hope for individuals. It's imagine how hard it would be to get clean if everybody around you is using drugs and like using fentanyl and like doing all this like the horrible, unhealthy like addiction things, right? And I think it perpetuates addiction. And I think it's a bunch of moving parts that they've created, which has made the problem way, like overdose deaths are crazy. Like it's been in the 2000s for like past 4 years, and they say it's work. It doesn't work. But basically, when you are given just free things, like if I was given a free house, free drugs, free everything, I don't think I would have ever wanted to get clean because I would have gotten everything I wanted. Like, I think I'd probably still be using drugs. It would have been a lot harder for me to get clean and stay clean if I was just given everything. And so there's this narrative that I see where they're like, oh, housing's like a right, but also safety's a right. There's a place, BC Housing had a place in Victoria, which, first it opened up for women and children, which I think is great. I think some women and children need help with that, especially women and children who have gone through abuse. I think housing for them is amazing. But then they also made it into a drug use site, and the insanity of that is they're mixing children with drugs. Like how unsafe is that? And they're telling us it works. So that's another issue. I could go on forever about this, but it's basically just creating and perpetuating addiction, if I had to sum it up. I volunteer also at other public institutions as well, like public treatment centers. One is called Redfish Healing Center, and I go there and volunteer, and like those places are just like incredibly sad. Like the place I went to, now I was lucky because I'm Indigenous, but if you're not Indigenous or you're not funded by Fraser Health at the privatized treatment place, you need to pay $10,000 a month to stay in treatment, and that's so much money. A lot of people can afford that. Not a lot of people have access to Fraser Health, or like you have to be a Fraser Health region, or obviously not everybody's Indigenous. So the people who don't have access have to go to these publicly funded places, and these publicly funded places actually have an incentive to keep people using drugs. I know, it's horrible. Because, like, for example, let's say you're like a program director at one of these sites, these publicly funded places. You're making $200,000, $150,000 a year. If all the people, and I don't know how much they make, but if you're a director, you probably make around above $100,000 a year. If people stop using drugs, then you're going to lose your salary, right? So they have those incentives for those people to keep people using drugs. Doctors, harm reduction doctors make a lot of money off of drugs, so they have an incentive to keep people on harm reduction drugs. Grants are shuffled and given more to publicly funded places from the NDP. And the reason it doesn't work is because their treatment style is atrocious. You basically just go to these places and you have a bunch of harm reduction doctors that give you a bunch of methadone and drugs, and you sleep. They're like, here's a bed, you sleep here, and you don't have to work on anything. You don't have to go to meetings. You don't have to change your behaviors. You just get to sleep here, basically. And then once they're done, their 3 months of treatment, they're still the same person, still have the same behaviors. So they relapse. That's why the relapse rates are so high at these places, because they don't actually help the people change. Which then perpetuates addiction, which then perpetuates the overdose crisis. And I think the government is complicit in the deaths of thousands of British Columbians and Canadians. I think the government is complicit in that. And that's another incentive of why they don't want to admit they're wrong. It's because if they admit they're wrong, they also have to admit that they caused the deaths of 50,000 Canadians. That's more Canadians. 50,000. That's more Canadians.
From when to when?
Overdoses, 2014 to present. That's more Canadians died. To put into perspective, 40 odd Canadians died in World War II, and 50,000 Canadians died to overdoses. So they're complicit in the deaths of 50,000 Canadians. And so they don't want to admit that. Because if they do, then now they have to answer to that question. And
This is a war
it's
on our health.
it's a war on people. It's a
Yeah.
war on people. Like when you say it's not a war on drugs, it's a war with drugs. They're using drugs, and a lot of people are making money off this. You know, like I've tried to talk to many politicians. One of them is Patrick Johnstone in New Westminster. He'll hear nothing from recovery addicts. There's 2 treatment centers in New Westminster in that community that are private treatment centers. He doesn't visit them, never visits them. He does not like them. And like the NDP, like I had somebody tell me that Redfish Healing Center was a success story. That's no success story. That's a sad story. The success story is places like the Westminster House, Last Door, and whatnot.